But there is this little secret thing that I like to add to my tomatoes.
Hi, welcome to Lilies and Tomatoes, your go-to place for simple and practical tips and tricks on how to start a garden all the way through how to use what you grow. This is from my live class that I teach on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays on Facebook. If you'd like to attend the live class or ask me a question, check out the link in the description.
Hello. Welcome back to my basement workshop. Today we're going to be potting up a tomato into a 5-gallon bucket. If we have not met yet, my name is Quincey Adams and I want to help you grow some of your own food in a small space on a budget. Let's get started. Okay, so this is Mr. Volunteer Tomato. Mr. Volunteer Tomato grew voluntarily in this small container. And I will show you, I labeled the container. So this is, I did the maths, and this is about a 2-gallon container, which is not big enough to sustain a good thriving tomato. So as you can see, he did grow. This is probably 2.5 feet tall. It's got some flowers right here. And he's setting some more flowers up here, but the vine is very thin and spindly and weak, and this definitely needs some support. I would not grow a tomato normally in a container this size. It's not big enough. A tomato plant needs a good 5 gallons of growing size, and this is a 2-gallon container. There's no measurements on the container, but I did measure to figure out the capacity of it. So it's 10 inches across the top and only 6 inches across the bottom. So that gives you an idea of like how big this container is. So what we're going to do is, you can see we've got our 5-gallon cat litter container behind us, and underneath this says that it is a number 5. So 5 is good to grow in. It also says that it's 20 liters and 5.3 US gallons. So 5-gallon container is a good size. So what I'm going to do, normally if I had potted this sooner, then I would have potted it normally and let it grow. But since it's so tall and spindly, what I'm going to do is set the tomato all the way down the bottom of this bucket, and then all of this space here to the top of the bucket, actually probably more like here, I'm going to bury this much of the stem. So this is a good 7 inches of the stem that I'm going to be burying so it can grow more roots and be stronger. And I'm going to take the flowers off because I want the tomato plant to focus on developing a strong root system and getting stronger and healthier. It's got some spots on it. It's struggling a little bit. And I don't want it to try to set fruit yet. I want it to wait and get stronger first. Is that a question? Let's go to the building. Oh my God. Thanks, Lucia. Okay, so we're gonna plant it deep. We're gonna cover 6 inches of the stem, and then I'm going to remove all of these branches below where I'm going to bury it, as well as the flowers at the top. Actually, I'm not going to cut the flowers at the top. You don't want to, unless you're chopping up your tomato, you don't want to cut at the top because it'll stop growing. I want it to keep on growing. I just want it to get stronger before it worries us about setting fruit. Okay, so as far as soil for tomatoes like a neutral soil, so they like a pH range of 6.8 to 7. The best way to manage that pH is with lime. This is garden lime. And this makes sure that the pH is right, and that if the pH is wrong, then the calcium will get tied up in the soil and the tomato won't be able to use it, and then you're going to end up with blossom end rot. So there are a lot of people who will use something to add calcium or magnesium to the soil. Those things are most likely already present in your soil. But if the pH is wrong, then your tomatoes are not going to be able to pull that out of the soil. So I prefer to go the lime route. There are other things that you can use. I don't want to get into those because I don't use those, so I can't vouch for how effective those are. But there is this little secret thing that I like to add to my tomatoes. I normally get this in a small bag like this. In a small bag this size will last me several years because I don't grow that many tomatoes. But when small bags are not available, then I did buy a large 60-pound bag of this last year because I was using it for other things besides just tomatoes. This is gypsum. Oh, we're turning it the wrong way. See? GYPSUM. This is not the original container, obviously. This is a coffee can that I saved for the small amounts that I had left of the gypsum. And gypsum is, hold on, I'm checking my notes, calcium sulfate. So this adds calcium to the soil for your tomatoes and prevents blossom end rot. Like I said, there's probably calcium in your soil already, so I only add a small sprinkle to the tomatoes. That's why a bag that's, how big is this bag? This is 6.75 pounds. So a 6-pound bag of gypsum will normally last me a good 4 or 5 years because I'm only putting a tiny amount in with my tomatoes in the soil. But the last time I bought gypsum, I could not find a small bag, so I ended up buying a big bag, and I will show you what this looks like. It's just granules. It's just gray. It smells kind of funky. That's the gypsum, and the same with the lime. It's granule and it smells kind of funky. And if you have sensitive skin, you should be wearing gloves when you do this. I do have sensitive skin, but I don't always wear gloves. Do as I say, not as I do. Okay, so what I'm going to do first is take the leaves off the bottom of this tomato. It's been inside for a couple days, so the soil in here is kind of dry, but not all the way dry. I will carefully pull this out of the container after I pull the leaves off. And if I break this, then I will put the top in water and let it grow roots. So now we've got the lower branches off. We've got the flowers off, and I will leave the flowers at the very top for right now. I don't want it to be completely naked because then it'll take longer to start to grow again. There's little baby leaves on the bottom. Okay, now let's do this gently. So I'm putting Vulcan Death Grip, or not Vulcan Death Grip, whatever. This is the Live Long and Prosper. So I've got 2 fingers on either side of the stem, and I can show it to you. I'm not getting the angle right. Oh, there we go. And I'm holding it down at the soil level. And what I'm going to do is hold this over the top of the bucket, so any excess will fall inside the bucket. And I'm going to gently pull as I squeeze the outside. And let's see if this comes out. Oh, there we go. So it's loosening and it's going to come out slowly, and we're going to take the whole root ball and drop it all the way to the bottom of this bucket. All right, this is a little bit heavy, but I wanted to show you guys that this tomato's not root bound. There are roots at the bottom and on the sides, but this tomato is not root bound. It would have survived in this container, but it would not thrive. Okay, and we've dropped it in here and made a big mess. And now we have a tomato in this bucket. Tomato in the bucket. And I've got my hand in the way, but it's all the way in there. A little bit more than halfway to the top, or halfway of where it was before. And I'm adding a little bit of lime. I'm not measuring this. I'm just throwing a little bit in there. This is also gray and granulated. So I'm just sprinkling this around the base, and I'm putting a little gypsum in there. As you can see, there's only a small amount in my hand, and I'll sprinkle that around. So this is low enough in the soil that it's still going to hit the roots at the very bottom. So you don't want to put amendments underneath your plants, because then it'll take the roots a long time to get to them if the amendments are still there by the time the roots get to them. So I don't like to normally mix a lot of fertilizers in with the soil. I prefer to just put them on top. That's just how I like to do it. Now we're going to add more soil. To fill this, there's an inner ridge in this bucket. I want to fill it to the inner ridge. So I need about 2 more inches of soil, but you can see how this works. And then I would also put a 6-foot stake in here, and when it grows to the top of the stake, I will top it off. Is that another question? Once you get the supported, how long would you wait until put it outside? Oh, after I put the stake in and fill this up, it goes outside tonight. I like to harden stuff off underneath my deck. So because I have a built-in area where things are protected, I have had the door open on my lower greenhouse for a couple weeks now. There's nothing in there. We haven't had a frost, and there's nothing in there that is super sensitive to heat or cold. So what I would do is I would put it in a protected, like sheltered environment, but outside, so it's semi-outside, and it's gonna go out there tonight. And then after a couple days, when it starts to put on new leaves, and then I will move it up to my deck, and then it'll be in full sun. So even when it's like only a little bit of sun, because my deck faces south, full sun is like full sun. So when I'm hardening things off, it's not just I'm putting in an area where it's going to get full sun part of the day. It's going to get full sun from sun up to sundown. So I want to make sure that I take a little bit of extra time to harden things off, because even though it's been a little bit cold for late May, on the days when it's sunny, even if it's not cold, it's a lot. In my upper greenhouse, it gets up to over 100 degrees by noon if the sun is out, even if it's not warm outside. So if it's 60 degrees outside but sunny, it can get over 100 degrees in my greenhouse because of the just intense sun exposure the top of my deck gets. But that's good for tomatoes. Tomatoes like heat and sun. So as many tomatoes as I can fit, I put up on my deck. Are there any other questions? Any other questions tonight? Is this good? Okay, so I forgot to show you this other thing. So I showed you that this pot that the tomato was in was 2 gallons. So this container is 10 inches across the top, 6 inches across the bottom. It's 9 inches tall. I did the math, so you don't have to. 2 gallons. I have grown cherry tomato varieties in a container that is this big. So this is a larger container. It's not quite double in size, but this is a 3.45 gallon pot. So across the top, it's 12 inches. Across the bottom, it's 7 inches, and it's 11 inches tall. So a pot this size is going to be just under 3.5 gallons. I have grown cherry tomatoes in containers this size. They're only going to set a couple of things of flowers and not going to get that many fruit. But if this is the biggest container you can fit in your growing space, you can grow a cherry tomato in here. I would not grow a bigger tomato because you're not really going to get any fruit. And still, it's going to get tall like this. You need to support it. So I did have 6-foot stakes in these containers with my cherry tomatoes. And then the birds ate them. But it can be done. It's not optimal. For optimal growth, you want 5 gallons for a tomato. Okay. So now we're going to recap for real. So tomatoes, for optimum growth, you want a 5-gallon container or bigger. Particularly if you're growing a full-size tomato. I mostly grow cherries or Romas. But 5-gallon tomato or bigger growing size for a full-size tomato. Tomatoes like Nutrisoil, so that's going to be a pH range of 6.8 to 7. A good way to get that, to make sure that your tomatoes can pull calcium from the soil, is lime. This is organic. Lime makes sure that your tomatoes are in the right pH zone and can grow and can get calcium out of your soil. You most likely have calcium in your soil already. If you want to make sure that your tomatoes are getting calcium, then you can add gypsum to your soil. Gypsum is calcium sulfate, and this will add calcium directly to your soil. If you're only growing in containers and growing a little bit of tomatoes, a 6-pound bag will last you for several years of gypsum. You don't need that much gypsum. So 6.8 to 7 pH, lime to help with the pH to make sure your tomato can pull calcium out of the soil. Gypsum adds calcium to the soil. And you want to just make sure that it is well watered throughout the season. Tomatoes are mostly water, so you need to make sure that your plant is getting enough water, because equal watering or like uneven watering is a major cause of blossom end rot. Is that another question? Can you remind me of the plastic number that's safe to grow in? So plastic on the bottom of these containers is going to be a number between 1 and 5. 2, 5, 4 are safe to grow in. 3 is not safe to grow in. 1 is safe, but you're probably not going to find it in a big container because it's for takeout food. So this container is a 5. 5s are good. 2s are good. Those are the numbers you're most likely going to see. 3s are bad. So just 2s, 5s, 4s, 1s. Not 3. 3 is bad. And if you're watching this anytime on the replay, just put your question, and I will get a notification, and I will answer your question as soon as I can. But Nutrisoil, lime, gypsum, 5 gallons, water well. Oh, and support your tomatoes. They definitely need to be supported. And I think that is it for right now. I will see you guys later. I hope you're having a good night. Bye.